Hello and welcome back to another Giant Slayer TFT Top 10 video. Today's video will be a countdown of the top champions for ranked play in patch 10.14. These are champions you're likely to see in most games, whether it's as a frontline, carry, or support. Keep in mind that the meta is always changing, so some of the champions on today's list may be different in a few days. With that said, let's dive on in. But before we begin, please don't forget to click the links in our description. Give your support to everyone who helped make this video happen. We host many TFT tournaments with plenty of exciting content to come, so be sure to also follow our Giant Slayer TFT social media pages. Alright folks, let's get back into the video, and to kick off our top 10 list, we have Neeko coming in at number 10. We should point out that this list is going to heavily focus on 3-cost champions, because a lot of them are doing really well in the current meta, whether as utility champions or as carries. Neeko falls under the utility category as her ultimate does an AoE stun, which is super useful in the current meta. Outside of her ability, Neeko's synergies are also amazing, as both Protector and Star Guardian are dominating the meta. Protectors in particular are fantastic because they serve as front lines for quite a few compositions. Star Guardian is a bit more niche, but with Syndra being such a strong carry, it's always worthwhile to have the trait, which often means you'll be playing Neeko. She's not the star of any composition, but Neeko definitely proves her worth as a Guardian. Up next is the number 9 champion on today's list. We have Xayah. Xayah is back in the meta as both a strong early game item holder as well as being the carry for the Shredder composition. While the composition isn't quite as dominant as others, it's still doing well because of both Xayah and Jarvan. As mentioned, Xayah also holds onto early game items quite well until you find a more suitable mid to late game carry. For the most part, those items will be physical damage focused, such as Last Whisper, Infinity Edge, or Deathblade. And those items, along with utility items like Runaan's or Rageblade, are also used within the Shredder build itself, where Xayah is the main carry. All in all, Xayah is one of the few 1-cost champions that can be used as an early game carry. Once again, Thresh is returning as he's coming in at number 8 on the list. Thresh continues his streak as a top champion patch after patch because he's just so consistent in the late game. He provides a ton of value in the late game by pulling in additional champions from your bench while having a great trait with Chrono. It's worth noting that Urgot got heavily changed in patch 10.14, and as such, it's no longer an easy win condition to pull in Urgot with your Thresh. But the two still pair well enough together even if Urgot's power has been limited. Outside of Urgot, there's a lot of options including Janna, Lulu, Wukong, Fizz, and Blitzcrank. Basically, any champion that can provide CC is worth pulling in, which is why Thresh is such a valuable pickup in the late game. We also should mention that while Mana Reaver isn't as easy to splash in right now, it's still important when playing Cybernetics. The build is still doing well in the meta, which means Thresh is even more useful when playing it. Overall, Thresh is likely to remain a top champion in every meta because of his late game potential. Let's move on and talk about Cassiopeia, who's doing quite well in the meta as our number 7 champion on the list. Cassiopeia is an important part of the meta as she's the primary carry when playing Mystics with either Protectors or Vanguards. Essentially, you're playing to protect her as much as possible while fielding the tankiest composition you can. This slows down the fight dramatically, which is where Cassiopeia shines the best, as her damage takes a while to ramp up since it's a damage over time effect. Generally, you'll want specific items for Cassiopeia, which are usually Blue Buff, Morellonomicon, and Rapid Fire Cannon. By far the most important is Blue Buff, so make sure you're grabbing Tears when possible, as it's often contested and difficult to get. The other two items aren't as essential, though they do help a lot in both survivability and overall damage. Cassiopeia is by no means the strongest carry in the meta, but she's still strong enough to make it on today's list. Moving along, we have Janna coming in as the number 6 champion on the list. Janna is highly contested in the late game because her ultimate has so much packed into it. It can stun multiple targets across basically the whole board, and it buffs allied champions it touches with an insane attack speed stim. That's so much for just one ability, and she can cast it relatively frequently with the help of Star Guardian. Not to mention, you can give her a Shojin, causing her to cast even more. What more could you really want from a legendary champion? We will say that Paragon isn't exactly making waves in usefulness. That said, it can still be useful against anyone running heavy Vanguards as their frontline. Star Guardian is by far the more impactful trait, as you can run her with 2 other Star Guardians in the current meta, such as Neeko and Syndra. So when is it best to play Janna? Overall, she can be played in practically any composition once you find her, but specifically she does well with Syndra or Xerath. Syndra because of Star Guardian, but also attacking faster means more mana, which means Syndra throws more orbs. Xerath should be obvious because his ultimate scales with attack speed. Janna is also a fantastic choice to have on your bench to get pulled in by Thresh, so keep that in mind as well. Up next, we have our number 5 champion, Jhin. Jhin, like almost every other Darkstar, got really good buffs in 1014 that has turned him into a powerhouse of a carry. He's one of 3 potential carries when running Darkstar and gets played in multiple compositions because of the damage and how easy it is to run 2 Sniper. You'll want to give him items to help him be more effective, or you may run into the issue of him attacking 1 Vanguard the entire fight. That does mean Last Whisper is a must-have on Jhin, as it's the best way to chew through Vanguard armor. After that, any physical damage item does well. You also won't really need a defensive item on him because it won't make much of a difference. Infiltrators and Syndra will wreck Jhin, and any defensive item doesn't do much to prevent that, so going all in on damage isn't a terrible choice. Or just look to give him 1 or 2 items and spread out your items elsewhere. In fact, for Jhin carry, all he really needs to do is be 2-starred with a Last Whisper as his only item, plus his trace of course. Syndra is the number 4 champion on today's list. Syndra got insane buffs in 1014 and immediately got her mana hot fixed from 40 to 50. Despite that, she's still doing well as one of the premier carries of the patch. Because she can still cast fairly often with the help of Blue Buff and Star Guardian, it puts a round timer on every single round. Once Syndra ramps up in a fight by placing enough orbs, she's almost guaranteed to win the round because her damage can now overflow to other champions if she instantly kills a unit. Additionally, she's really easy to fit into a composition because all you need to do is have 2 other Star Guardians with her. A popular way to play her right now is to use both Syndra and an AD carry like Jhin, so it's easy to fit both of them in with minimal traits required. This versatility, along with her damage, makes her one of the top carries in the game currently. We're now into our top 3 picks, and to start it off, we've got Shaco as the number 3. Shaco is doing well as a Darkstar carry because he provides access to the enemy backline. This means he can get to those pesky Jhins or Syndras. He's flexible enough to do well in multiple compositions, though anything with Darkstar and a second Infiltrator is obviously preferred. Look to give him Bloodthirster and Guardian Angels as primary items for him to carry fights super hard. Much like Jarvan, Shaco is quite contested, so it may be difficult to 2-star him or even find him in most games, so keep that in mind and don't commit items for him until you have him 2-starred. Shaco, like Syndra, can be quite flexible in the composition you play him in. It's common for most builds to run at least 2 Darkstars, so you've got that secured. Just make sure to toss in another Infiltrator like Fizz, and you're good to go. He's also fantastic early game, as an early Shaco is a quick way to secure yourself a win streak. Overall, he fills an important role in the meta as he's a threat to the enemy backline carries. Ashe is the surprise pick of the week. She's coming in at number 2 on the list. Okay, so surprise pick may not be the best phrasing because Ashe has been a solid champion for a while, but after receiving buffs in 1014, she became all around better than she was previously. Most importantly, her stun duration was buffed, so now if you build to buff her attack speed or use the Shojins or mix of both, you can shoot several arrows out in a single round. That's just a ton of CC from one champion. Outside of her ultimate, she has okay traits. Specifically, Sniper is doing well because Jhin is a top carry at the moment, and playing Ashe does make Celestial easier to play if you're not running Protectors. But overall, if you're looking for a ranged champion with strong CC, Ashe is the top pick right now. And this week's number 1 champion is Jarvan. Yep, Jarvan. We're sure it's not a surprise to see him as the number 1 champion because, well, he's kinda good right now. After receiving several buffs in the patch, he's become a core champion for basically any build and is highly contested in the early game. Even after getting hot fixed, he's still doing really well. Basically, he can tank a lot of hits if you pair him with another protector, and he casts a decent amount with a reduced mana pool. Throw Warmogs on him and he practically lives the entire fight. Give him even more defensive items and you won't even notice what the hotfix did to him. At the moment, he's the cornerstone of several compositions, including Darkstars, Protector, and even just as an additional frontline for Star Guardians. If you're not playing Jarvan, we highly recommend you try him out. And that is a wrap for our top 10 champions list. But we're not done just yet because we have our honorable mentions list to go over. Our first honorable mention this week is Bard. Bard's ultimate is almost good enough to push him over into the top 10 list, but he's held back by the fact that his value goes down drastically the longer the game goes on. Sure, there are playstyles that utilize him in the later game, but in general, the most value you can get from Bard is finding him early. And since that isn't always going to happen, we can't in good faith place him in the top 10. That said, he's a unique champion that has a ton of value under the right circumstances. The next honorable mention is actually a pair of champions, Fizz and Echo. We feel it's necessary to highlight these two because of how common Shaco carry is in the meta. Either of these champions are likely to be played with Shaco, and both of them have really strong ultimates. Echo does have a bit more value because cybernetics are still in the meta, whereas Mech Pilot really isn't. As we said though, both of them have strong ultimates that can threaten the enemy backline, which is quite useful in the current meta. Alright folks, that's all we have for you today. The meta feels a lot more diverse than the previous patch did, as there's a lot of options for your frontline, utility, and carries. That said, there's definitely a big emphasis on Dark Stars, Protectors, and 3-cost champions in general. Let us know in the comment section below how you feel about the list and what champions you think deserve to be on it. Thank you for watching, and if you're enjoying our content, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for future Giant Slayer TFT videos.